Welcome to Satsang. Wonderful to be together with you all. We'll start as usual with a question that's come in from our global family, joining us from all over the world online, sending in their questions in advance. And then we'll open it up, just one sec. And then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. I recently lost my husband. Thank you. I recently lost my husband after 22 years of marriage, and I truly believe that I am to blame for his death. My behavior toward the end of his life was horrible, and I feel that this is the reason that he died. Now I am lost without him. Feelings of guilt, especially when bad things happen to people we love, so frequently leads to us feeling guilty. Someone we love gets sick, someone we love dies, someone we love is in some kind of a bad situation, and it's very common that we think, oh my God, if only, if I just had called, if I just hadn't called, if I just had gone to see them, if I just hadn't gone to see them, and then they wouldn't have been there, and then they wouldn't have been in the house when the fire struck or when the earthquake struck. If I just had done this or been like that, then this wouldn't have happened. It's also really common that we look back on how we were with that person we loved, and that a lot of us could feel like this questioner does, my behavior was horrible. I mean, if you stop for a moment and you think right now about the people you love, just choose 2 or 3 people you love. People who are still living. And just think about your last 10, 15 interactions with them. Whether you have 10, 15 interactions a day or a week or a month, whatever it may be. But just think back on the last 10, 15 interactions you had with those people you loved. For most of us, when we think back on those interactions, sadly, we are not filled with a sense of, oh, God, I'm so good to them. They're so good to me. I'm really conscious and present and aware and loving when I'm with them. Most of us, when we think about it, we feel kind of badly. Like, oh my God, I didn't speak nicely to them at all. I was impatient. I was short. I was too busy. I didn't pay attention. I didn't help when they needed help. And so if that person happened to die, then we would look back on those interactions even more strongly. And then we'd feel even worse about them. So here's what I can tell the person who asked this question. You are not to blame for your husband's passing. Even if you wanted to have control over someone else's karmic journey, you couldn't. We don't have that power. And that's even if you actually took a bow and arrow or a knife or a gun. I mean, Lord Krishna makes it so clear in the Bhagavad Gita. When Arjuna says, but I could kill them. And Bhagavan Krishna basically says, and who are you to be the one who gets to decide who lives and who dies? Like, that's not up to you. Yeah, the bow and arrow's in your hands. But don't think you're the one in charge. Don't think you're the one who's determining who lives and who dies. This is written. It's written into karma. You're just a vehicle of that karmic experience happening to them, for them. So if Arjuna himself, with a bow and arrow aimed at someone, pulling back the bow, flinging the arrow, if he's not the ultimate cause of that person's death, the teaching of it, it's not an abdication of responsibility. We have to take responsibility for what we do. That's our own karmic journey. We're getting all of the karmic results of what we do. So we must take responsibility, but we don't have control of someone else's karmic package. So Arjuna didn't have control of Duryodhana and his family and associates' karmic package. And this woman who's asked the question, you didn't have control over your husband's karmic journey. That which you said or didn't say, how nice you were to him or not nice you were to him, isn't what led to his death. Because you haven't been given that power. That would mean that you were given more power than Arjuna. It would mean that you were given more power than Bhagavan Krishna says we have. Now, if you were nicer, the last days of his life would have been nicer, no question about that. There wouldn't have been as much conflict, there wouldn't have been as much struggle, there wouldn't have been as much negativity, absolutely. But you didn't cause his death. You're not responsible for that. But also recognize that it's very natural to think that you are. It's how so many of us think. But recognize that you're not. But allow this, instead of it being festering guilt inside of you, allow it to be a really powerful, difficult, tragic wake-up call of living consciously in every moment. Because even though your actions or words didn't change his outcome, it certainly changed the environment in which he died. It changed the environment in which he lived those last days or weeks or months. And that is a power that we have, that we don't realize, is how we create the environment we live in. and how we create energetically situations for other people as well. So when you think about those 2 or 3 people I had you think about in the beginning, if the last 10 or 15 interactions with them have not been ones that make you feel very proud, very happy, that you're really living in presence, in love, in truth, then be very grateful that they are still alive and that you do still have the opportunity to change while you still have them. And if those people are no longer living, or in the case of this woman whose husband, it's an awful tragedy. And his soul, his spirit is still here. His body is no longer here, but his soul and his spirit is, and you can still communicate with him. Yourself. I don't mean you have to go and find a medium to communicate through, but you can connect inside yourself. You've lived with him, you've known him, you've loved him for decades. Surely you can feel him inside of you, hear him inside of you, see him inside of you. Because it's only the body that dies, not the soul, not the spirit. And so if there's someone in your life who has passed away and you feel like there's unfinished business, that you didn't really get to say what you wanted, you didn't get to say it in the right way, you didn't act in the right way, talk to them now. Close your eyes and talk to them now. They can hear you. And whenever you feel regret about not having been present in those moments, let it be just a powerful and difficult and yet beautiful reminder of the importance of being present and living in our heart every minute. You know, there's a practice given by the followers of something called Stoicism, which is a path, a practice about maintaining equanimity, maintaining balance, maintaining actually a sense of happiness no matter what happens outside. And one of the practices that they use is literally imagining that someone you really love has died. And don't do it for too long because it becomes very troubling, but just 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Just think for 3 to 5 seconds that someone you really love has died. And see what that does to you inside, and you feel like, oh my God, oh no. And then you come back and you remember, oh no, they haven't actually. That was just an exercise I was doing. And what you'll find is that the love you have for that person, the gratitude you have for them, the gratitude you have to the divine for giving you that person, is so much more than it was 10 seconds ago. And so it's a great practice. You can do it for a loved one, you can do it for your job, you can do it for your house, you can do it for your health, you can do it for your life. Anything that you take for granted. Just give yourself a few seconds to imagine that you no longer have it. Imagine that a doctor has just given you a terminal diagnosis. Oh my God. And then realize it's not true. And just notice how grateful you are for the health of your body that we weren't even noticing 10 seconds ago. As you walk into your house, just think for a moment that you're walking through ashes, that it's burned down. And then realize it hasn't. And how grateful you are for that which you have. So, back to the questioner, I I am so sorry about the loss of your husband. I wish I had a magic wand to bring him back, to let you do it differently. But one of the most difficult and yet non-negotiable truths of life is there's no rewind button. There's no do-over. You know, on the computer we've got this Control-Z or Alt-Z or Apple-Z, depending on what computer you use. And it just undoes whatever you've done. You can just undo it. Life, unfortunately, doesn't have such a button. Which means that we need to really be conscious in every minute and every moment. If this were the last moment of our life, of that person's life, of my health, of my job, how would I feel? And can I live to the highest consciousness? In love, in truth, in sincerity, in presence, in gratitude? But lastly, please remember, please know, you did not kill him. It is not your fault that he died. And if you don't believe me, just pick up the Bhagavad Gita and read it and reread it and reread it and reread it until you know it. Other questions? Any question that anyone here might have? Yes.
So you say that lady should leave should remember her husband in her body.
I'm so sorry. Can you begin that again?
So you said that lady should remember her husband.
Yes.
In her body, in her memories, right?
That she should see him inside her, that she can use her inner eye to see him and use her inner ears to hear him, yes.
But won't it create more karma for her husband?
No. Okay. This is a good question.
Because I think that soul has completed his karma with that lady. But now if she remembers, it may still stuck with her.
Okay, so this is a great question. If you remember someone who's passed away, are you somehow holding back their soul? No, you're not. If the karma was all done between them, she wouldn't be devastated and distraught that she thinks she's the one who killed him. The very power of that energy within her is a signal that there is stuff still to be worked out. On her side, at least. His soul, even being wherever it is now, she's not. It's so hard to think about it because we're so used to dealing with things physically, and it would sound like somehow, well, you left me here in Rishikesh, you got on an airplane to Mumbai. Now, by remembering you, am I somehow dragging you from Mumbai back to Rishikesh in order to have this conversation? No. As a body, I would have to do that. If I want to have a conversation with you, I would have to drag that body from Mumbai back to Rishikesh, or use something like a phone so that you from Mumbai could talk to me. But the soul is different. There's not an aspect of it being able to be in Mumbai and being inaccessible to her in Rishikesh. Because when someone's body dies, we don't lose the connection that we had to their soul. There was a coming together of souls that doesn't disappear just because the body is no longer there and now the soul has a new body. There's so many bodies. I mean, what about people who lifetimes ago had some relationship? Now today there is some aspect of that bearing fruit coming into today. That soul that she was connected to is still accessible to her by her soul inside. And it's not going to drag his soul from Bombay back to Rishikesh. He can be on his journey while she is accessing him. And that which she has to say to him, he will be able, in whatever way you understand that souls understand and feel or hear or know, that peace that will actually bring about an even more complete conclusion karmically. Because if you were in a situation where your wife was, and I don't know whether she really was horrible or she just feels horrible. I don't know who asked this. But imagine that you were in a situation where someone really was horrible to you. I mean, imagine you were in a very abusive situation. And someone actually murdered you, let's say. Well, you no longer have a body. The soul is now on its journey, but it's very clear there is still some unfinished karma with the guy who murdered you. That's a karmic interaction that on some level, in your next life, in the life after that, there's going to be a resolution somewhere to that karmic experience. And if the person who did it suddenly realizes, suddenly repents while they're still in that life, that's going to have an impact on the future karmic work that needs to be done. So yeah, don't worry about him being held back in any way. The only thing that can hold back souls is if those they've left behind really can't let them go. There's absolutely teachings that say, yes, obviously grieve, but then stop grieving. Because when you hold on too much, it makes it difficult for that soul to go, because on some level there's still an attachment to the loved ones who have been left behind. But that's not what I'm hearing this woman ask. I'm not hearing her say, I need him back, how dare he leave me, this isn't fair, he needs to stay, he can't go, I can't live without him, I need him. I hear her feeling incredibly guilty for the way she was before he passed on, and needing resolution with that. So that's not something that's going to prevent him from moving forward. In fact, it seems to me that would actually be something that would contribute to him being able to move forward, because it would ease in some way the conflicted karma from the situation in which he left. I mean, if you imagine he loved her and she was horrible to him, well, there's conflicts there. And that stays. I mean, remember, man, buddhi, ahankar, that subtle body, the sukshma sharir, travels with the soul. And all of that is impacted by the thoughts we have, the experiences we're having, the sanskaras that we have. And so her actually reaching out to resolve on some level some of that karmic experience could absolutely have an impact in that subtle body and the impressions that are traveling with his soul, and actually make the journey even easier. Yeah, so nothing to worry about there. Any other questions? Yes.
Hello, and feeling very blessed to be able to be back here for the second time this year. The question.
Can you speak just a little bit louder?
Is it better now?
It is a little better, I think. Or maybe Krishna Priya can just help you. Thanks. Like this.
Good evening. Feeling very blessed to be back here already second time this year. And the question I have is how to love without attachment.
Beautiful. How do we love without attachment? The more we can really love that other being and not need them to fill us, the less attachment there will be. Attachment comes because I need you. And usually it's actually more than just I need you in general. It's usually more than just I love you so much I need you here. But it's I need you to act in this way, be in this way, live in this way. Most of the attachments that we have are not just to the person, however they may be, however they may live, whatever choices they may make, but it's attachment to them making certain choices, them living in certain ways, them behaving in certain ways. And the more we can relinquish our need to be filled, which comes through an awareness of how full we are. If I feel that I'm lacking in some way, so let's say that I feel kind of worthless, and I feel like I'm not very beautiful, and I'm not very smart, and I'm not very successful. And maybe I believe these things because in my childhood they were told to me in some way, or that was just a sanskara, an impression that I picked up in my childhood based on how my parents spoke to me, or my siblings, or my teachers. Now I move through my world feeling like I'm lacking in some way. Now I meet someone, and that person just thinks I am the best thing in the world. And he tells me all the time how beautiful I am, how smart I am, how everything I am, how much he needs me, how I'm everything to him. Now, that fills up in me all of those places that had felt empty. Suddenly when I'm with him, I no longer feel like I'm not beautiful enough or like I'm not smart enough. I feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. I feel like the smartest person, the most worthy, the most everything, because I'm everything to him. And then he stops telling me that. Maybe he still thinks that he's just stopped telling me. Maybe he's gotten busy at work and he's kind of stressed. Or maybe he thinks I don't need to tell you that all the time anymore. Or maybe, God forbid, he's actually having an affair, or he doesn't love me anymore, or whatever it may be. Now that attachment was not just to his presence in my life. It was to how I felt, how he made me feel. So my love was not just for him in the fullness of his being, regardless of what he says to me, regardless of how he treats me, regardless of how loyal he may be or not. It was a love predicated upon, keep telling me how beautiful I am, keep telling me how wonderful I am, keep making me feel like the center of your universe. And the minute that stops, I find that my love is no longer there. So if you want to love without attachment, you need to really ask yourself, how can I, in my own sadhana, come to terms with my own fullness? Do my own work, my own psychological work, my emotional work, my spiritual work, such that I'm no longer holding on to these wounds, these mirages of emptiness and holes in me that I think I need someone to fill. So that when I love someone, then I can just love them for who they are and how they are, and I don't need them to be a certain way, to behave a certain way. Ask yourself as you're loving, am I loving the words, the actions, or am I loving soul? If the words were different, if the actions were different, could I still love? And challenge yourself. Really challenge yourself. You know, you're sitting across from your loved one, and the loved one is telling you, oh, I love you, you're so beautiful, you're so wonderful. But just imagine in your mind that instead of that, he or she was saying, you are so ugly. You are so stupid. I cannot believe that I, am stuck here with you. Could you still love them? Just practice it. Just practice sitting there looking at the one you love and see whether you can generate love for them inside you. Even imagining that what you hear them say is something that's very hurtful. And if you can, then it's real love without attachment. But if the minute that you imagine them saying something that's hurtful, you find that you no longer have access to that love, then it's much more attachment than love. But it's a good practice to strengthen and generate real love within you. Beautiful. Yes. आपका कोई प्रश्न था? अच्छा, okay. You were just raising it for her. Okay. Yes. Yes.
पूज्य श्री, आपके चरणों में दंडवत प्रणाम। मैं पहली बार आपके सत्संग में आया हूँ। व्यवहारिक जीवन से जिस आत्मकल्याण के मार्ग की शुरुआत कैसे करें और उसमें आगे कैसे बढ़े?
How do we embark and follow that path of discovering the truth of who we are, of discovering the soul, of self-realization, God realization, soul realization. You begin right here, right now. You begin where every minute that you say to yourself, I am, and you fill in that blank with something that has to do with your physical body, that has to do with a role you play, or an emotion you're having, that every time you say that to yourself, that you come back and you say, not this, not this. Right? So if you say, oh, I'm so angry, or I'm so frustrated, or I'm so happy, got an A on the exam, had a great pizza dinner, I'm so happy. Say to yourself, neti neti, not this, not this. I am not the body that's happy from eating pizza. I am not the ego that's happy from an exam score. I'm not the ego that's angry at this or frustrated by that. I'm not the chemicals or electricity in my brain that gives me a pattern that we call anger or sadness or happiness. Every time you say something like, I am successful, or don't you know who I am? Or the opposite, I am worthless. I'm lazy, I'll never achieve anything. Anytime you say anything like that, any I statement like that, just say, neti neti, not this, not that. I am not my job. I am not my role, my title, my bank account, my story. Whether I consider myself a big man or a nobody, either way, I'm not that. It's just a story. It's a story my ego's concocted based on information from the outside world, based on experiences. But it's not who I am. Because I existed long before I decided I was a big man, or long before I decided I was a nobody. I existed long before I was angry or frustrated, long before I had the pizza dinner that made me happy, long before I was anything that you could fill in after I am. So just whenever you find yourself saying I, neti neti, not this, not this. And slowly, 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 that awareness will blossom. And do it as a meditation. It's a beautiful meditation. And you just go through one by one all of that which you are not. Not the clothes you're wearing, not the skin, not the blood, not the bones, not the organs. Right? You do it very slowly, one by one. I am not the clothes I'm wearing. I am not the skin beneath the bones. And you go layer by layer and you stay with each one until the mind says, yeah, like I know that, I get that, I know that is true. Not just I'm repeating it like a mantra, but I actually know it is true. I know that I am not my blood. I know that I am not my organs. Because see, I donated a kidney, but I'm still here. I didn't cease to exist. Or I got a kidney transplant, but I didn't become a different person. I had my appendix removed. Didn't lose myself. So I'm not my organs. I'm not the bones. I'm not the blood. And then you get into the cells of the brain, right? I am not my neurons, obviously. I'm not gray matter. I'm not white matter. I'm not the chemicals inside the vesicles, the end of each neuron. I'm not the electricity that runs down the axon of the neuron, causing the vesicles of the chemicals to be released. It's not who I am. I'm not chemistry. I'm not serotonin. I'm not norepinephrine. I'm not dopamine. These are just chemicals in my brain. But if I'm not them, then it means I'm not my thoughts. It means I'm not my emotions. It means I'm not my memories. All of that which takes place in the brain happens because of chemicals and electricity. So if I'm not that, then I'm also not my thoughts, not my emotions, not my identification, not my personality. I'm nothing that can be altered, chemically or physically. So anytime you think I am that, ask yourself, if I were really drunk, or I were on drugs, would that thing still be the same? And if the answer is no, then it means, well, all you've done is altered your chemistry. Right? I mean, how many people under the influence of something say, that was not me? I don't know who that was not me. Meaning, that which I said, that which I did, is not the way I normally think of myself. But all you did was change chemistry. So just as you were not the new person who was under the influence, similarly, you're not the old person. Because that's also just chemistry. It's just chemistry without the additional intoxicants. Anything that would change if you changed the brain structurally. So you have a stroke, a hemorrhage, a brain injury, a lesion. If that would alter any aspect of who you think you are, your personality, your identity, your emotions, your memories, well, clearly that can't be you because you're not your temporal lobes, right? You're not your prefrontal cortex. It's just a part of your brain. It's not who you are. So you do this practice called neti neti. Not this, not this. And you go through anything that arises, anything you can think of. Anything that you think you might be. And just allow that to percolate for a while in your mind and ask yourself, really, is that really me? Could that be altered chemically? Could that be altered physically? And if so, then it's not me because I don't cease to exist or change. The depth of who I am doesn't change just because I'm drunk or I had a stroke. I don't change. Just my brain changes. Means that's not who I am. And as soon as you clear all of that which you are not, what is left? Soul. Divinity. That infinite consciousness. That's all that's left. I am consciousness. I am soul. It's the only thing that doesn't come and go or change. But that awareness comes by removing all of the layers of that which I think I am. And only then can you see what you really are. If you want to see in a river or lake, you have to remove the gunk from the surface. If you want to see outside the window, you have to clean it and open the curtains. And so we do these practices to clean our eyesight so we can see. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evenings. A beautiful day to our family joining us from all over the world, tuning in online. And I look so forward to being with you all again tomorrow. And so much love.